Two police dogs tracked a scent for miles and found a little girl bound and terrified. What happened after shocked the world. Nobody was prepared for the dark truths that would emerge from this desperate search. As darkness fell on day 3, hope was fading fast. Nobody expected these four-legged heroes would uncover a nightmare hiding in plain sight. What began as a desperate search for one missing child would soon expose secrets powerful people had kept hidden for decades. Pinewood Creek was the kind of small town where people left their doors unlocked at night. Until 8-year-old Emma Sullivan vanished without a trace while walking home from her piano lesson. One minute she was skipping down Maple Street, her pink backpack bouncing behind her. The next, she was gone, as if plucked from existence by an invisible hand. It's like the earth just swallowed her whole. Sheriff Daniels told reporters as search parties combed through woods and dive teams dragged the lake. But 72 hours in, they'd found nothing. Not a backpack, not a shoe, not a single clue. Emma's mother collapsed on national television, her father's hands trembling as he clutched his daughter's teddy bear. "Please," he begged, his voice breaking. "She's all we have." With time running out and hope evaporating, Sheriff Daniels made the call to neighboring Harrison County for their specialized K-9 unit. It wasn't just their last hope. It was their only hope. But what these two remarkable dogs would discover would test the limits of what anyone thought possible. Mike Ramirez hadn't slept in 36 hours when the call came. A 20-year veteran of the K-9 unit, he'd seen it all, or thought he had. Shadow, his 7-year-old German Shepherd, sensed the gravity before Mike even hung up the phone, already alert and waiting by the door. "This is probably going to be recovery, not rescue," Mike muttered to his partner, Officer Kara Jenkins, as they loaded their gear. Kara nodded silently, her eyes betraying her inexperience. At just 26, she'd only been with the unit for 8 months. Her bloodhound Rusty, however, had tracking in his DNA. "Don't say that," Kara finally replied, checking Rusty's specialized harness for the 3rd time. "Not until we know for sure." When they arrived in Pinewood Creek, the scene was chaos. Volunteers trampling potential evidence, media vans clogging narrow streets, and Emma's parents looking like ghosts of themselves. "We've had every available officer and half the town searching," Sheriff Daniels explained, dark circles under his eyes. "If she's out there, we should have found her by now." Mike knew the statistics. After 48 hours, chances of finding a missing child alive plummeted. They were now at hour 73. As Shadow sniffed Emma's pajamas for a scent, Rusty was already working, nose to the ground, circling the last place Emma had been seen. The bloodhound suddenly froze, lifting his head with an alertness that made Kara's heart jump. "He's got something," she whispered, barely believing it herself. Something faint that everyone missed. Mike had seen enough false starts to remain skeptical, but Shadow was now showing interest in the same area. 2 dogs, 2 different training methods, both alerting this wasn't coincidence. The sheriff looked bewildered. "We had dogs out here on day 1. They found nothing." "With all due respect," Mike said, watching Rusty strain against his lead, "these aren't just any dogs." What lay ahead was a test of endurance that would push both dogs and handlers beyond breaking point, with a little girl's life hanging in the balance. "They're heading away from town," Sheriff Daniels said, confusion evident as he struggled to keep pace with Mike and Shadow. The German Shepherd moved with purpose, nose occasionally lifting to catch airborne scent particles before returning to the ground. His black and tan coat glistened with morning dew as he navigated the increasingly complex terrain with unwavering focus. Behind them, Kara and Rusty followed a parallel path, the bloodhound's methodical tracking style contrasting with Shadow's more dynamic approach. Rusty's loose skin folds swayed with each deliberate step, his droopy eyes belying the laser-sharp precision of his olfactory capabilities. Both dogs, however, were locked onto something invisible to the human members of the search party. "This makes no sense," the sheriff panted, wiping sweat from his brow despite the autumn chill. "We searched this entire area, twice, had 50 volunteers combing every inch." Mike said nothing, his weathered face a mask of concentration. 20 years had taught him to trust his dog over human assumptions. Shadow had found a missing Alzheimer's patient submerged in mud up to his neck after 3 days when a 100-person search team had given up. If Shadow believed Emma's scent led this way, that's where they would go, regardless of how improbable it seemed. The human nose has about 6 million olfactory receptors, Kara explained to the skeptical sheriff, her breath forming small clouds in the cool morning air. Shadow has around 225 million. Rusty here has closer to 300 million. They're essentially following a neon trail that we can't even begin to perceive. The terrain grew more challenging as they left the established search grid behind. What began as suburban streets gave way to thickening woods, then a ravine so steep the officers had to form a human chain to navigate it safely. Exposed roots became treacherous handholds. Loose rocks skittered down the incline, disappearing into the underbrush below. By hour 4, even Mike was questioning their direction, though he'd never admit it aloud. "We're 5 miles from where she disappeared," Kara noted, checking her GPS as she paused to take a swig from her water bottle. She offered it to Mike, who declined with a shake of his head. Could an 8-year-old girl really have walked this far, through this kind of terrain? The unspoken alternative hung in the air. She didn't walk, she was taken. The sheriff's radio crackled with updates from other search teams, all reporting negative results. The frequency of these reports had diminished over the hours, the initial urgency fading into the grim resignation that characterized most missing children cases after the critical first 48 hours. "We should consider heading back," the sheriff suggested, not for the first time. "Daylight's burning, and we've got teams waiting for direction." Mike gestured toward Shadow, who hadn't hesitated once. "Tell them to stand by. We're on to something." "How can you be so sure?" the sheriff pressed, frustration edging into his voice. "Because I've never seen him this certain," Mike replied simply. When they reached the creek, both dogs suddenly lost the trail, circling in confusion, noses to the ground, then up in the air. Rusty whined, a high-pitched sound of canine frustration. Shadow paced back and forth along the water's edge, occasionally looking back at Mike as if asking for help. Mike felt his heart sink. Water often meant the end of a scent trail, and sometimes the end of hope. Kara knelt beside Rusty, murmuring encouragement. "Find Emma, boy. Find Emma." The bloodhound's tail drooped, his usual confidence visibly shaken. Sheriff Daniels sighed, removing his hat to wipe his forehead. "Well, that's that then. Water disperses scent. Everyone knows that." But then Shadow did something extraordinary. He lifted his head, testing the air with short, rapid sniffs, his entire body suddenly rigid with attention. Without warning, he bolted across the creek, sending water splashing in all directions, to a seemingly random spot on the opposite bank. There, he began pawing frantically at the ground, soft whines escaping his throat. "He's air scenting," Mike explained to the bewildered sheriff, already splashing through the knee-deep water after his partner. "He's catching fragments carried by the wind. It's rare, but it happens when conditions are just right. Temperature inversions can trap scent molecules close to the ground, especially in the morning hours. Rusty joined Shadow moments later. Both dogs now focused on the same area with an intensity their handlers recognized as significant. The bloodhound's excited baying echoed through the trees, a sound that Kara knew meant absolute certainty. "There's nothing here," Sheriff Daniels said, gesturing at the undisturbed forest floor as he reluctantly crossed the creek to join them. "Just more woods. More of the same terrain we've been covering for miles." But Mike was already scanning the surroundings with trained eyes. Something about the vegetation looked different, subtly disturbed. The pattern of fallen leaves too perfect, too deliberate. The absence of new growth in a small patch where sunlight clearly reached the forest floor. Details that might seem insignificant to an untrained observer, but screamed manipulation to someone who'd spent decades reading the subtle language of disturbed environments. He knelt, brushing away fallen leaves to reveal what appeared to be ordinary dirt. His fingers probed the soil, feeling for inconsistencies. "This ground has been disturbed. Recently. The whole forest floor gets disturbed," the sheriff countered. "Animals, weather, not like this," Mike interrupted, his voice quiet but firm. "This is methodical. Hand me that branch," he told Kara, pointing to a fallen limb nearby. Using it as a probe, Mike tapped the ground methodically. On the fifth tap, they all heard it, a hollow sound that didn't belong in solid earth. A sound that made the hairs on the back of Kara's neck stand up. "What the hell?" the sheriff whispered, suddenly alert. Mike continued tapping, mapping out an area approximately 6 feet by 8 feet. Every tap produced the same unnatural, hollow response. Shadow and Rusty both intensified their efforts, digging now with determined paws, soft earth flying behind them. "Get everyone back," Mike ordered, adrenaline surging through his veins. "And call for backup. Heavy equipment if they've got it." The sheriff hesitated. "What exactly do you think we've found?" Mike was already on his knees, using his hands to clear away more debris, revealing what appeared to be a seam in the earth itself. "I don't know yet. But whatever it is, someone went to extraordinary lengths to hide it." Kara joined him, using her tactical knife to probe along the edge they'd uncovered. "It's wood," she confirmed. "Treated lumber under all this dirt and plant matter." What they had found, hidden beneath a masterfully disguised trap-door of earth and branches, was a man-made structure. A cellar or bunker of some kind, deliberately concealed from aerial searches and ground teams alike. The craftsmanship was impressive in its deception, and terrifying in its implications. As they cleared more debris, they uncovered what appeared to be a rudimentary handle mechanism. Mike exchanged a glance with Kara, both drawing their service weapons in silent agreement. "Sheriff, call for tactical support," Mike said, his voice deadly calm. "And stand back." With a nod to Kara, Mike gripped the handle and pulled. The door resisted at first, then gave way with a groan of rusted hinges. Stale air rushed out, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of human presence. And from within came the faintest sound, a child's whimper, so soft it might have been imagined, if not for the immediate reaction of both dogs. Their training momentarily forgotten as they attempted to push past their handlers toward the sound. "Emma!" Kara called into the darkness, her flashlight revealing the first few rungs of a ladder descending into shadows. "Emma Sullivan. We're police officers. We're here to take you home." The whimpering stopped, replaced by a silence more profound than anything they'd experienced in the living forest around them. Then, a small voice, hoarse from disuse or crying or both. "Please help me. I want my mommy." "Stay back," Mike commanded, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Sheriff, secure the perimeter. Nobody comes down until we assess the situation." The sheriff nodded, already speaking urgently into his radio, requesting tactical units, medical support, and crime scene technicians. The woods that had seemed so empty minutes before now buzzed with renewed purpose as coordinates were relayed and responders mobilized. Mike holstered his weapon and turned to Kara. "I'm going in first. You cover the entrance. If anything feels wrong, anything at all, you pull back and wait for tactical." "Like hell," Kara replied, checking her flashlight. "We go together. Standard procedure for unknown structures." A ghost of a smile crossed Mike's face. The rookie had learned fast. "Shadow, stay," he ordered, and the German shepherd reluctantly obeyed, though his body trembled with the effort of restraint. The opening revealed a crude wooden ladder descending about 8 feet into darkness. The air wafting up carried a complex mixture of odors: dampness, human waste, fear. Both officers pulled respirator masks from their kits. They'd seen enough crime scenes to know that what awaited might challenge even trained professionals. Mike descended first, each rung creaking ominously under his weight. Kara followed, her flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. At the bottom, they found themselves in a narrow corridor, roughly hewn from the earth and supported by timber frames, the work of someone with basic construction knowledge but considerable determination. "Emma," Mike called softly. "It's okay. We're police officers. We're here to help you." A small sound came from somewhere ahead. Not words, but a whimper that might have been human or animal. The officers exchanged glances and proceeded cautiously, weapons drawn but pointed downward. The corridor extended about 15 feet before opening into a larger space. As their flashlight beams swept the area, the full horror of what they'd discovered became clear. It wasn't just a cellar. It was a bunker. A carefully constructed prison cell, complete with a small cot, a chemical toilet, and shelves stocked with water and non-perishable food. A battery-powered lamp sat on a crude table alongside coloring books and crayons, a grotesque parody of childhood comforts. And there, huddled in the corner atop a pile of blankets, was Emma Sullivan. Her pink pajamas, the ones from the missing person flyers, were dirty but intact. Her blonde hair was matted, her face streaked with tears and dirt. She stared at the officers with eyes that had seen too much, clutching a ragged stuffed rabbit to her chest. "Emma," Kara said gently, holstering her weapon and crouching to the child's level. "My name is Officer Kara. This is Officer Mike. We've been looking for you. Your mom and dad sent us." The little girl's eyes widened. "Mommy? Daddy?" Her voice was barely audible, rough from disuse or screaming or both. "They're waiting for you," Mike confirmed, conducting a quick visual assessment of the space. No other doors, no other occupants. But something about the setup, its permanence, its careful design, sent ice through his veins. "Is he gone?" Emma whispered, her eyes darting to the entrance. "He said he'd be back. He always comes back." Mike and Kara exchanged a glance loaded with understanding. This wasn't an impulsive crime. This was planned, prepared, and potentially not the first. "Who comes back, Emma?" Kara asked, keeping her tone conversational while Mike radioed their findings to the sheriff above. "The woodsman," Emma replied, as if stating the obvious. "He said I'm not the only princess in his forest. There are others, but I'm his favorite." Mike's radio crackled with the sheriff's voice. Tactical team is 5 minutes out. Medical right behind them. We need to get her out now, Mike replied, eyeing the sturdy construction of the bunker. And Sheriff, tell them to look for other structures. This isn't his first. Kara slowly approached Emma, careful not to make any sudden movements. May I pick you up, Emma? We need to take you somewhere safe. The little girl hesitated, then nodded, extending thin arms. As Kara lifted her, the child weighed almost nothing. 8 days of captivity had taken their toll. As they turned to leave, Mike's flashlight caught something on the far wall. Photographs, dozens of them, pinned carefully in rows. Young girls, different ages, different years judging by the clothing styles. Some images appeared decades old. Go, he told Kara urgently. Get her out, I need 30 seconds. As Kara carried Emma toward the ladder, Mike approached the wall, his stomach churning. Each photograph showed a different child in this same bunker. Some were smiling awkwardly at the camera. Others were crying. All wore the same vacant expression Emma had, the look of someone whose world had collapsed into a nightmare. Below the photographs was a crude ledger. Dates, names, locations. Some entries had been crossed out. Mike snapped quick photographs with his phone before retrieving a small evidence bag from his pocket. He carefully removed the ledger from its nail on the wall and sealed it. The sound of movement above told him Tactical had arrived. This was now a major crime scene, possibly one of the biggest the state had ever seen. As he climbed the ladder toward daylight, the weight of the ledger in his pocket felt like a stone. They had found Emma Sullivan against impossible odds. But the nightmare was far from over. Because somewhere in these woods, the woodsman was watching. And according to his ledger, there were other princesses still missing. The forest erupted into controlled chaos. Emergency vehicles lined the narrow access road, their lights painting the trees in alternating red and blue strobes that penetrated the deepening shadows. Crime scene tape cordoned off a perimeter that grew wider by the hour as investigators discovered more evidence requiring preservation. What had begun as a small search party had transformed into a massive operation involving multiple agencies. Their collective focus centered on the innocent life they'd rescued and the monster who had taken her. Emma Sullivan, wrapped in thermal blankets and clutching her stuffed rabbit, now identified as Mr. Hoppy, sat in the back of an ambulance while paramedics gently assessed her condition. Her small frame seemed to disappear among the blankets, making her appear even more fragile than her 8 years. Though physically present, her eyes occasionally drifted to middle distance, her mind retreating to places the adults around her could only imagine with dread. Her parents had been escorted to the scene, but were being kept at a distance. While initial medical evaluations were completed, standard procedure in cases where trauma assessment took precedence over emotional reunions. Though the separation clearly pained them, Emma's mother, Catherine, alternated between sobbing with relief and staring in disbelief at the forest that had concealed her daughter. Her father, James, stood rigid, his fists clenched at his sides, eyes never leaving the ambulance where his daughter sat. Dehydrated but stable. The lead paramedic, Dr. Melissa Chen, informed Sheriff Daniels as she reviewed the preliminary assessment. Blood pressure is lower than we'd like, and she's lost approximately 10% of her body weight. No obvious physical injuries beyond minor abrasions and malnutrition. But she lowered her voice, glancing toward the child. The psychological evaluation will need to be extensive. She's exhibiting signs of dissociation, which is a common trauma response. There are also indications of sleep deprivation, the dark circles under her eyes, delayed responses to questions. The sheriff removed his hat, running a hand through thinning hair. Was she... did he... Dr. Chen understood the unfinished question. No signs of sexual assault from our preliminary examination, but a full evaluation will be conducted at the hospital. Sometimes the psychological trauma can be just as devastating as physical abuse. The isolation alone. She trailed off, her professional demeanor momentarily cracking. Kara sat beside Emma, maintaining the connection they'd established in the bunker. She'd removed her tactical vest and equipment belt, presenting a less intimidating presence. The girl hadn't spoken much since her rescue, responding only with nods or headshakes to direct questions, occasionally whispering something to Mr. Hoppy that the adults couldn't hear. "You're being so brave," Kara told her, careful not to touch the girl without permission. "Is it okay if I sit with you a little longer?" Emma nodded, then unexpectedly reached for Kara's hand. Her small fingers were ice cold despite the blankets. "Are the dogs magic?" she asked softly. Kara smiled. "They're very special, but their abilities are real, not magic. They can smell things we can't even imagine." "He said no one would find me," Emma whispered. "He said the forest protects his princesses." Kara made a mental note of the phrasing, knowing every detail could be significant. "Well, Shadow and Rusty are forest experts too. They were determined to find you." As if recognizing their names, Shadow and Rusty rested nearby, occasionally lifting their heads when Emma looked their way. Both dogs, despite their training, seemed reluctant to leave the vicinity of the child they'd located. Shadow, in particular, maintained a vigilant posture, his ears perking at every sound from the surrounding woods. 50 yards away, Mike stood with the tactical team commander, Captain Reynolds, and FBI Special Agents Diane Mercer and Robert Torres, who had arrived via helicopter less than an hour after Emma's discovery. They spread the contents of the ledger across the hood of a police cruiser, each page carefully placed in evidence sleeves to preserve any trace evidence. 23 names, Agent Mercer said, her face grim as she examined the pages through evidence gloves. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun, her expression professionally neutral despite the horror contained in the documents before her. Dates going back 30 years. Some are crossed out. Some have stars beside them. We need to cross-reference with missing persons databases across multiple states. The methodology is consistent, Agent Torres added, pointing to notations beside several names. He documents their arrival and what appears to be behavioral assessments. Adapting well. Resistant to instruction. Perfect princess material. The language suggests he views this as some kind of twisted educational process. He called himself the Woodsman, Mike explained, recounting Emma's words. And he told her there were other princesses. Given the photos we found and this ledger, we're potentially looking at a serial predator who's been active for decades without detection. The fairy tale motif is significant, Agent Mercer noted. The Woodsman character appears in several traditional stories, including Little Red Riding Hood, where he rescues the girl from the wolf. In his mind, he's likely casting himself as the protector, not the predator. Some protector, Captain Reynolds muttered, keeping a child in an underground bunker. The bunker itself shows sophisticated construction, he continued, gathering himself. Ventilation system, water collection, waste management. This wasn't built overnight. And the location, 5 miles from the nearest road, camouflaged well enough that multiple search teams missed it, suggests intimate knowledge of the terrain. A local, Sheriff Daniels concluded, his face ashen. Someone who knows these woods. Maybe someone who works in them. Agent Mercer nodded. Forest, service, park ranger, hunting guide, logger. We'll need to compile a list of everyone with legitimate reason to be familiar with this area. And we need search teams with cadaver dogs. She paused, glancing toward the crossed-out names in the ledger. Some of these dates go back decades. If there are remains, I've already requested additional resources, Agent Torres said. HRT is on standby, and we've got forensic anthropologists from Quantico en route. The Bureau is treating this as a major case, potentially one of the most significant predator investigations in recent history. Mike's phone buzzed with a text from Kara. She's asking for you. Mentioned something about a promise the woodsman made. He excused himself and walked to the ambulance where Emma sat, still wrapped in blankets despite the afternoon warmth. Her eyes, which had seemed so vacant in the bunker, now tracked everything with hypervigilant intensity. A common response in trauma survivors, cataloging potential threats and escape routes. "Hey there," Mike said, crouching to her eye level but maintaining enough distance to avoid crowding her. "You doing okay?" Emma studied him for a long moment before speaking, her voice stronger than it had been in the bunker. "Your dog found me?" Mike nodded. Shadow did. He's very good at his job. The woodsman said no one would ever find me there. He said it was magic. A flicker of something, pride perhaps, crossed her face. "But your dog broke the spell." Mike exchanged a glance with Kara, both recognizing the coping mechanism of a child processing trauma through fairy tale frameworks. It was simultaneously heartbreaking and remarkably adaptive. Emma's mind finding ways to make sense of the senseless. "Emma," Mike said gently, "did the woodsman ever take you anywhere else? Or talk about other places in the forest?" The girl's expression clouded. "He has a house, a real one, not underground, with pictures of all his princesses on the walls." She hugged her rabbit tighter, her knuckles whitening. "He said someday I'd live there with him, but first I had to learn the rules in my special room." "Did he tell you what these rules were?" Kara asked softly. Emma nodded, her gaze dropping to Mr. Hoppy. "Princesses must always be clean and neat. Princesses must be grateful for rescue. Princesses must never try to leave the forest." Her voice took on a sing-song quality, as if reciting something memorized. "Princesses who follow all the rules get to join the woodsman in his castle. Princesses who break the rules." She stopped abruptly, trembling. "It's okay," Mike assured her. "You don't have to say any more if you don't want to." Agent Mercer, who had approached silently, made notes without interrupting. This was valuable intelligence. Confirmation of a secondary location, likely the subject's actual residence, and insight into his methodology and belief system. "Do you remember how to get to this house?" Kara asked. "Did you see it?" Emma shook her head. "I was sleeping. When I woke up, I was in the special room." Her lower lip trembled. "He made me drink special princess tea. It made me sleepy." She looked up suddenly, her eyes wide. "He's going to be angry. He said he'd come back with presents if I was good." "You don't need to worry about him anymore," Mike assured her, though he knew the psychological impact would linger long after the physical danger had passed. "We have lots of police officers here to keep you safe." "Can I see my mom and dad now?" Emma asked, suddenly sounding very much like the 8-year-old she was, rather than the survivor of unimaginable trauma. Dr. Chen, who had been monitoring the conversation from a respectful distance, nodded to Mike. "She's stable. The parents have been briefed by victim services." Short reunion here, then we transport to Children's Hospital for full evaluation and treatment. As Emma's parents were escorted to the ambulance, their faces contorted with a complex mixture of joy, horror, and guilt. Mike stepped away. The emotional reunion, filled with gentle embraces and tears, Catherine repeatedly stroking her daughter's hair while James knelt beside them, one hand protectively on his wife's shoulder, was necessary for Emma's recovery, but difficult to watch for those who understood how rare such outcomes were. 23 names, Mike murmured to Agent Mercer as they walked back toward the command post. How many families never got this moment? That's why we need to move quickly, she replied. The recovery of a living victim and the discovery of his documentation changes everything. Most predators like this are only identified after they've stopped or died. We have a rare opportunity to potentially save others and bring closure to families who've been searching for decades. Back at the command post, the search had expanded exponentially. Topographic maps were spread out, areas marked in grids. Search teams with specialized equipment were being deployed to look for similar underground structures. Analysts worked to identify patterns in the abduction locations listed in the ledger, while digital specialists attempted to match the names with missing persons reports from multiple state databases. The profile is emerging, Agent Mercer told Mike as they rejoined the group. Highly organized, patient, meticulous planning. The fairy tale elements suggest he's creating an elaborate fantasy world, one where he's not just abducting children, but rescuing princesses. Making himself the hero of his own story, Mike concluded. Exactly. And given the longevity of his activities without detection, he likely presents as completely normal, respected even, someone above suspicion. The kind of person who might be watching us right now, Mike suggested, glancing toward the darkening tree line. Agent Torres nodded grimly. We've established an outer perimeter with state police and local deputies. Media blackout is in effect. We're reporting only that a missing child was found. No details about the bunker or evidence of other victims. But you're right. If he's local, he'll know something's happening. Sheriff Daniels approached, his face grim. We've got something. Cadaver dogs alerted at 2 locations about half a mile north of here. Ground-penetrating radar shows disturbances consistent with grave sites. The weight of what they were uncovering settled over the group like a physical presence. Emma had been found alive, a miracle by any standard. But the ledger suggested many others hadn't been so fortunate. How soon can we begin recovery? Agent Mercer asked. Forensic team is setting up lights now, the sheriff replied. They want to start before any weather moves in. The meteorologist says there's a front coming through tomorrow that could compromise the sites. As darkness fell over the forest, portable lights illuminated the crime scene, creating islands of harsh brightness amid the natural darkness of the woods. The ambulance carrying Emma and her parents had departed for the hospital, Kara accompanying them as protection and continuity. The child's testimony would be crucial, but equally important was ensuring she had familiar, trusted faces around her during the difficult days ahead. Mike stood at the edge of the search perimeter with Shadow, watching teams methodically work through the gathering darkness. The dog, despite hours of exhausting work, remained alert, occasionally turning his head to track sounds from the forest that human ears couldn't detect. What do you hear, boy? Mike murmured, scanning the tree line. The tactical teams had established a secure perimeter, but he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, a sensation that had intensified as night fell. His phone buzzed with a message from Kara. She's talking more. Says the woodsman wears a uniform, like a real forest hero. Green with badges. Also mentioned he has a beard like Santa but not white. Doctors are letting her rest now. I'm staying overnight at the hospital." Mike showed the message to Agent Mercer, who immediately began making calls. "Park Service, forest rangers, conservation officers. We need personnel lists going back 30 years. Focus on individuals with access to this specific area." "The beard detail is new," Mike noted, "and the uniform narrows it down considerably. We'll run background checks on everyone who fits the description," Agent Torres said. "Employment history, property records, behavioral flags. If he's been doing this for decades, there might be complaints or suspicions that were dismissed or not connected previously." As the investigation accelerated around him, Mike knelt beside Shadow, running a hand through the dog's fur. "Good boy," he murmured. "You found her when no one else could." The German shepherd leaned against his handler briefly, accepting the praise, before returning his attention to the forest. His posture remained vigilant, ears forward, nostrils flaring occasionally to capture scents carried on the night breeze. The forensic team at the suspected grave sites had erected privacy screens and powerful lights. The methodical work of evidence recovery would take days, possibly weeks. Each site would be treated with the utmost care, not just potential evidence against a predator, but the final resting place of someone's child. "We should get you and Shadow some rest," Agent Mercer suggested, approaching with 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Mike. "Tomorrow's going to be crucial. Once word gets out about what we've found, everything changes. If our subject is still in the area, he'll either run or escalate," Mike finished. "I know the pattern. There's a command center being established at the ranger station 2 miles east of here. Cots, food, shower facilities. 4 hours of downtime would do you both good." Mike knew she was right. Shadow was trained to work long hours, but even the best K-9 officers needed recovery time. And his own fatigue was becoming evident in slowed reaction times and the dull headache forming behind his eyes. "I'll head over soon," he agreed. "Just want to check in with the search coordinator first." As Agent Mercer walked away, Mike's phone buzzed again. Another message from Kara. Emma woke up crying. Said the woodsman promised to take her to see the other princesses tomorrow. Special ones who learned all the rules. Doctor gave her mild sedative. Parents are beside themselves. The message sent a chill through Mike that had nothing to do with the night air. The timing suggested the woodsman had a schedule, one that included returning to the bunker tomorrow. If he followed his routine, he would discover his captive missing and the authorities present. A cornered predator was unpredictable, dangerous. And if he had other victims still alive somewhere in these woods. Mike immediately forwarded the message to Agents Mercer and Torres, adding, "We need to consider the possibility of live victims at secondary locations. If he planned to take her to see others tomorrow, they could be at risk when he discovers she's gone." The response came seconds later. Tactical briefing in 10 minutes. Bring your topographic knowledge. As Mike headed toward the command tent, Shadow suddenly stiffened beside him, a low growl rumbling in his chest. The dog's attention was fixed on a point in the darkness beyond the perimeter lights, his posture communicating clear alarm. "What is it, boy?" Mike murmured, instantly alert, one hand moving to his sidearm. Shadow's growl deepened, the hair along his spine rising. Whatever had triggered his reaction remained invisible to human perception, concealed by the darkness of the forest that had already hidden too many secrets. Mike keyed his radio. Possible movement in the northwest quadrant. K-9 alert, requesting backup for visual confirmation. As tactical officers moved to respond, Mike stared into the darkness, acutely aware that somewhere in these familiar woods lurked a predator who had operated undetected for decades. And now, for the first time, his carefully constructed world was threatened. The woodsman would be watching, planning, perhaps already eliminating evidence, or worse, eliminating witnesses who could identify him. And they were in a race against time to find him before he disappeared, or worse, took another princess for his collection, or decided that his current princesses had become liabilities too dangerous to keep alive. Dawn broke over the forest with reluctant gray light, filtering through a low ceiling of clouds. The overnight rain had left everything damp and glistening, complicating the work of the evidence recovery teams who now labored under hastily erected canopies. The crime scene had expanded dramatically in the 12 hours since Emma's rescue, with 3 additional suspected grave sites identified by cadaver dogs and confirmed by ground-penetrating radar. Mike stood at the edge of the command center, freshly showered but still exhausted despite 4 hours of fitful sleep on a cot in the ranger station. He cradled a steaming cup of coffee, watching Shadow work with the forensic team. The German Shepherd moved methodically through a grid pattern, occasionally sitting to indicate the detection of human remains. Each alert was marked with a small flag, creating a grim constellation across the forest floor. "Your dog is extraordinary," remarked Dr. Eliza Winters, the forensic anthropologist who had arrived from Quantico overnight. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, her experienced eyes missing nothing as she supervised the meticulous excavation of the first gravesite. His discrimination between decomposition levels is remarkable. He's identifying remains that must be at least 20 years old. He's specially trained for cold cases, Mike explained. Most cadaver dogs alert on recent remains. But Shadow can detect trace amounts of human decomposition decades after death. Dr. Winters nodded appreciatively. "We'll need that skill. Based on the ledger dates, some of these burials could date back to the early 1990s. The first recovery was already underway, a process that would take hours to ensure no evidence was compromised. The exposed earth revealed glimpses of fabric, preserved by the soil composition and depth of burial. A small team of forensic technicians photographed and documented each layer as it was revealed. Officer Bradford?" Agent Mercer approached, her crisp appearance belying the fact that she likely hadn't slept at all. "We have a development. The FBI data team cross-referenced the names in the ledger with missing persons reports. We've confirmed matches for 17 of the 23 names." She handed him a tablet displaying a spreadsheet. Each row contained a name from the ledger alongside a corresponding missing person case file. The dates ranged from 1992 to 2023, with Emma Sullivan being the most recent. The geographic spread was concerning. Cases from 5 different states, all within a 3-hour drive of their current location. "He's been hunting across state lines," Mike observed. "Smart. It prevented agencies from connecting the cases." "Exactly. And look at the victim selection pattern." Agent Mercer swiped to a new screen showing photographs of the confirmed victims. All were girls between 7 and 10 years old, all with blonde hair, all from middle-class families. He has a clear type, and his methodology evolved over time. The earlier abductions were from public places, playgrounds, shopping malls. The more recent ones were from homes, suggesting increased confidence and risk tolerance. Or increased desperation to fulfill his fantasy, Mike suggested. If he's escalating to home invasions, his compulsion is overriding his caution. Agent Torres joined them, his expression grim. "We've compiled a list of current and former employees of forestry services, parks departments, and conservation agencies with access to this area. 37 individuals fit the general description from Emma's statement." Any standouts? Mike asked. We're prioritizing based on employment duration, access patterns, and any red flags in background checks. But there's something else. Torres lowered his voice. One of the rangers who participated in the initial search for Emma, Gerald Blackwood, didn't report for his shift this morning. His supervisor says it's completely out of character. Mike felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. Description? 58 years old, beard, 29 years with the Forest Service. Lives alone in a cabin about 15 miles from here. We're sending a team to his residence now. I want to be there, Mike said immediately. Agent Mercer nodded. I thought you might. The tactical team is assembling now. But Bradford, this is observation only for you and Shadow. If Blackwood is our subject, he's dangerous and potentially armed. Understood. As Mike headed toward the vehicles, his phone buzzed with a message from Kara. Emma had a better night after the sedative. She's asking about Shadow. Says she dreamed the woodsman was angry because the dog broke his spell. Doctors say it's good she's processing through metaphor. He quickly typed a response. Tell her Shadow says hello. We're following a lead. Possible suspect identified. The drive to Blackwood's cabin took 30 minutes. The last 5 on an unmarked dirt road that wound deep into the forest. The tactical team, 8 FBI agents in full gear, traveled in unmarked SUVs, maintaining radio silence as they approached. Mike and Shadow rode in the last vehicle, accompanied by Agent Torres. What do we know about Blackwood? Mike asked as they navigated the rutted road. Torres consulted his tablet. Joined the Forest Service in 1996. Exemplary record. Specialized in search and rescue operations. Lived in the area his entire life. Parents deceased, never married. No criminal record, not even a parking ticket. Too perfect, Mike murmured. That's what flagged him in our initial screening. That and his involvement in multiple missing person searches over the years, including 3 of our confirmed victims. The cabin came into view as they rounded a bend. A substantial structure of logs and stone, larger than the typical ranger accommodation. A Forest Service truck was parked in the gravel driveway. Solar panels gleamed on the south-facing roof, and a satellite dish was mounted near the chimney. The property was well maintained, with split firewood stacked neatly against an outbuilding. No signs of activity, Torres noted as the vehicle stopped a quarter-mile from the cabin. Thermal imaging shows no heat signatures inside the main structure. The tactical team deployed with practiced efficiency, establishing a perimeter while 2 agents approached the cabin with a battering ram. Mike watched from the designated safe distance, Shadow alert beside him. The dog showed no signs of agitation, which suggested no immediate threat, but also no recent human presence. The entry was swift and coordinated. Within minutes, the team had cleared the cabin and outbuildings, confirming what the thermal imaging had suggested. Gerald Blackwood was not home. Bradford, Agent Mercer called from the cabin porch. You and Shadow need to see this. Inside, the cabin was immaculate. Hardwood floors gleamed beneath area rugs. A stone fireplace dominated one wall of the living room, flanked by built-in bookshelves filled with volumes on forestry, wildlife, and, Mike noted with growing unease, fairy tales and folklore. A collection of antique woodcutting tools hung on another wall, meticulously arranged and polished to a shine. But it was the study that confirmed their suspicions. Agent Mercer led them to a room at the back of the cabin, where maps covered one wall, topographic surveys of the surrounding forest with areas marked in red. Some of the markings corresponded to the locations they'd already discovered. Others indicated places they hadn't yet searched. He documented everything, Torres said, gesturing to a filing cabinet. Each drawer was labeled by year, containing folders organized by name. We found Emma's file. Details of her abduction, daily logs of her progress, photographs. Mike felt a surge of anger as he scanned the meticulous records of a predator who viewed his crimes as some kind of deranged project. Where is he now? Unknown. But based on the state of the cabin and the warm coffee pot in the kitchen, he left in a hurry, probably within the last few hours. Shadow had been systematically exploring the cabin, his training allowing him to investigate without contaminating evidence. Suddenly, the dog froze, his attention fixed on a braided rug in the center of the study. He circled it once, then sat staring at Mike with clear intent. "He's alerting," Mike said. "There's something under that rug." Agents carefully rolled back the rug, revealing a trap door built into the hardwood floor. The craftsmanship was exceptional. When covered by the rug, it would be completely invisible. Consistent with his methodology, Agent Mercer observed as the tactical team prepared to open the door. Underground spaces, hidden entrances, careful concealment. The trapdoor opened to reveal a wooden staircase descending into darkness. The tactical team led the way, weapons drawn, powerful flashlights illuminating a space that made Mike's blood run cold. Unlike the crude bunker where Emma had been held, this underground room was finished and furnished. A macabre museum dedicated to Blackwood's victims. Glass display cases contained items that could only be trophies. Hair ribbons, small shoes, pieces of clothing. Photographs lined the walls, showing girls at different stages of captivity. Some appeared to be post-mortem images, the subjects arranged in peaceful poses like sleeping princesses. "Jesus Christ," Torres whispered. But it was the far corner of the room that drew their immediate attention. There, behind a locked door that the tactical team quickly breached, they found a small bedroom containing a child-sized bed with pink princess bedding. And on that bed, alive but sedated, lay a girl who appeared to be about 9 years old. "We need medical here now," Agent Mercer shouted into her radio as Mike rushed forward to check the child's vital signs. "Pulse is steady but slow," he reported, noting the IV line running into the girl's arm from a medical bag hanging beside the bed. "She's been drugged." As paramedics rushed down the stairs, Mike stepped back to give them room to work. His gaze fell on a small desk in the corner, where a leather-bound book lay open. The handwriting inside matched that of the ledger they'd found in the bunker. December 15th, 2025. Princess Emma has been corrupted by outsiders. The forest has been breached. The sanctuary is no longer safe. Must relocate Princess Lily before the spell is broken completely. The castle to the north remains secure. Mike's heart raced as he read the entry to Agent Mercer. He has another location, and possibly more victims. "The castle to the north," she repeated, immediately turning to the maps on the wall upstairs. "There. That's the only major property he has marked north of here." The location was circled in red, approximately 12 miles north of their current position, deep in the most remote section of the forest. Unlike the other marked locations, this one had a small drawing beside it, a crude castle tower. "Full tactical response," Torres ordered into his radio. "Possible hostage situation at these coordinates. Suspect Gerald Blackwood should be considered armed and extremely dangerous." As the team mobilized, paramedics carried the unconscious girl, now identified from a file as Lily Peterson, reported, missing from a neighboring state 6 months ago, up the stairs and toward the waiting ambulance. "She'll be okay," one of the paramedics assured Mike. The sedative appears to be a common benzodiazepine. She should regain consciousness within a few hours. Mike nodded, relieved but still troubled by the enormity of what they'd discovered, and what might still await them at the castle to the north. He knelt beside Shadow, who had remained vigilant throughout the search. "We're not done yet, boy," he murmured. "There's one more place we need to check." The tactical planning took place in a hastily established command post outside Blackwood's cabin. Satellite imagery showed the northern location to be a remote hunting lodge on a ridge overlooking a small lake. The property was registered to a corporation that, upon quick investigation, traced back to Blackwood through several layers of shell companies. "Smart," Agent Torres noted. He kept his primary residence seemingly normal while conducting his worst activities at remote locations under different ownership. "The approach will be challenging," the tactical team leader explained, pointing to the satellite map. "Single-access road, heavily wooded terrain, elevated position giving clear sight lines. If he's barricaded himself inside with hostages, this could become a siege situation." "Time isn't on our side," Mike reminded them. "Based on his journal entry, he knows we've found Emma. He's in crisis mode, which makes him unpredictable and dangerous, especially to any remaining victims." Agent Mercer nodded. "We'll approach with aerial support. Helicopter with thermal imaging can tell us how many people are inside before we move in." As the tactical team finalized their approach strategy, Mike received another message from Kara. Emma's parents showed her a photo lineup. She positively identified Ranger Blackwood as the woodsman. Says he was always nice to her until he wasn't. Doctors are keeping her sedated now, too agitated after the identification. He showed the message to Agent Mercer, who immediately relayed the confirmation to the tactical team. The identification removed any remaining doubt. Gerald Blackwood was their predator, and every minute he remained at large put lives at risk. The convoy departed within 20 minutes, a line of unmarked vehicles moving swiftly through the forest. Mike and Shadow rode in the middle vehicle, the dog sensing the urgency of their mission. Overhead, the thrum of helicopter blades announced the arrival of aerial support. "Thermal imaging is picking up 2 heat signatures inside the structure," came the report over the radio. "One adult-sized, one child-sized. Adult appears to be moving rapidly through the building. Possible preparations for departure or destruction of evidence." "We need to move now," the tactical commander decided. "Standard hostage protocol. Perimeter containment. Negotiation attempt. Tactical entry only if imminent threat to the hostages detected." As they approached within a mile of the property, the vehicles pulled off the road. The final approach would be on foot, using the forest cover to conceal their movements. Mike and Shadow would remain with the command unit until the perimeter was secured. "Bradford," Agent Mercer said as they prepared to deploy, "I know you want to be part of the entry team, but—" "I understand," Mike interrupted. "Shadow and I will stay back until the scene is secure. But if you need us for tracking, we're ready." She nodded, then hesitated. "What we've found today, it's the kind of case that haunts you. When this is over, make sure you talk to someone. The Bureau has excellent resources for officers involved in cases like this." Mike appreciated her concern, but was focused entirely on the operation at hand. As the tactical team disappeared into the forest, moving silently toward Blackwood's castle, he knelt beside Shadow. "This ends today," he told the dog, who watched him with intelligent eyes that seemed to understand the gravity of their mission. "One way or another, we're bringing him in." The radio crackled with the first report from the advance team. Visual on structure. 2-story hunting lodge with observation tower, Subject visible through second-floor window. Appears to be gathering items into a backpack. Child not visible from this position. Minutes stretched into an eternity as the tactical team established their positions. Mike paced beside the command vehicle, unable to remain still while a child's life hung in the balance. Shadow stayed close, sensing his handler's tension. Then, without warning, the radio erupted with urgent voices. Movement at the rear entrance. Subject is exiting with a child, appears unconscious, being carried over his shoulder. Subject is armed with a rifle, moving toward the boathouse at the lake edge. All units converge on the boathouse. Maintain cover. Do not engage unless the child is in immediate danger. Mike's training took over. Without waiting for permission, he and Shadow raced through the forest, following a path parallel to the tactical team's approach. If Blackwood reached the lake with a boat, he could disappear into miles of remote wilderness. They couldn't let that happen. Through breaks in the trees, Mike caught glimpses of the scene unfolding below. The hunting lodge was an imposing structure of logs and stone, its observation tower rising above the tree line. A wooden staircase descended from the rear of the building to a small dock where a motorboat was moored. And moving swiftly down that staircase was Gerald Blackwood, dressed in his Forest Service uniform, a rifle slung across his back and an unconscious child draped over one shoulder. The tactical team was closing in, but their approach was cautious. The risk to the child too great for aggressive action. Blackwood would reach the boat before they could intercept him, unless someone cut him off from an unexpected direction. Mike made a split-second decision. "Shadow track," he commanded, pointing toward the boathouse. The German shepherd understood immediately, racing ahead through the underbrush toward the lake shore, with Mike following close behind. They emerged from the trees just as Blackwood reached the dock. The ranger froze at the sight of them, his eyes widening with recognition and then narrowing with hatred. "Forest Service K-9 unit," Mike announced clearly, his sidearm drawn but pointed downward. "Put the child down, Gerald. It's over." Blackwood's face contorted with rage. "You broke the spell," he snarled, his voice nothing like the professional ranger's tone he'd used during the search for Emma. "You had no right to take my princesses." "The only spell was the one you created," Mike replied, keeping his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "Those girls weren't princesses. They were children. Children with families who loved them and missed them. Their families didn't protect them." Blackwood spat. "I saved them from a world that would only hurt them. I kept them safe in my forest." Shadow stood rigid beside Mike, a low growl rumbling in his chest. The dog's eyes never left Blackwood, tracking his every movement. "You didn't keep them safe," Mike said. "You kept them prisoner. And now it's time to let this one go." Blackwood glanced down at the child in his arms, a girl with blonde hair, her small body limp. "She's coming with me. The forest will protect us. It always has." Mike could see the tactical team moving into position behind Blackwood, their approach silent and methodical. He just needed to keep the ranger talking for a few more moments. "The forest didn't protect Emma," Mike reminded him. "Shadow found her. He'll find any place you try to hide." At the mention of Shadow, Blackwood's expression darkened further. "That dog is unnatural. He shouldn't have been able to find my special room. I built it with protective magic." "There's no magic, Gerald. Just a man who hurt children and a dog trained to find them." Mike took a careful step forward. "Put her down. Don't make this worse than it already is." For a moment, indecision flickered across Blackwood's face. Then his expression hardened into resolve. If I can't protect her, no one will. He began to shift the child's weight, one hand moving toward the rifle on his back. "Shadow, take," Mike commanded. The German Shepherd launched forward with explosive speed. Before Blackwood could reach his weapon, Shadow had clamped powerful jaws around his forearm. The ranger screamed in pain and surprise, instinctively releasing the child as he tried to fend off the dog. Mike rushed forward, catching the girl before she hit the wooden dock. In the same fluid motion, he pulled her clear of the struggle, shielding her body with his own. The tactical team swarmed in, securing Blackwood even as he continued to fight against Shadow's grip. Only when the Rangers was fully restrained did Mike give the command for his partner to release. "Good boy," he told Shadow, who immediately returned to his side, alert but calm now that the threat was neutralized. Agent Mercer approached as paramedics tended to the child, who was beginning to stir from her sedated state. "That was a hell of a risk, Bradford," she said, though her tone held more admiration than censure. "Shadow wouldn't have let him hurt her," Mike replied with absolute confidence. As Blackwood was led away in handcuffs, still ranting about princesses and protection and the magic of the forest, Mike knelt beside the awakening child. Her eyes fluttered open, confusion and fear evident in her expression. "It's okay," he assured her gently. "You're safe now. The woodsman can't hurt you anymore." "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice hoarse from disuse. "My name is Officer Mike, and this is Shadow." He gestured to the German Shepherd, who sat calmly nearby. "He's the one who found you." The girl's gaze shifted to the dog, and something like wonder crossed her face. "Is he magic?" Mike smiled, remembering Emma's similar question. "Something even better than magic. He's real, and he's been looking for you for a very long time." As paramedics prepared to transport the girl, identified as 10-year-old Abigail Foster, missing for 11 months, to the hospital, Mike stood at the edge of the lake, Shadow by his side. The castle would be searched thoroughly for evidence of other victims, the investigation continuing for months or years to come. But the most important work was done. The woodsman's reign of terror had ended. The forest would no longer hide his secrets. Mike's phone buzzed with a message from Kara. "Emma's asking when she can meet Shadow properly. Says she wants to thank him for breaking the spell." He smiled as he typed his reply. "Tell her Shadow and I will visit as soon as the doctors say it's okay." And the spell is broken for good. As they walked back toward the command post, Mike felt the weight of the case begin to lift slightly from his shoulders. There would be difficult days ahead, testimonies to give, evidence to process, families to notify, both with joyful reunions and heartbreaking confirmations of loss. But today, at least, they had won. Today, they had brought light to the darkest corners of the forest. And for children like Emma and Abigail, that made all the difference in the world.